What's up, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about psychedelics and if they are innately spiritual or not. So this is big stuff amongst the psychedelic community, whether or not these psychedelics are in and of themselves spiritual things and spiritual teachers, or if they are just another type of drug that causes this very peculiar experience. And this is something I've thought about for a while in all my years of using psychedelics and working with psychedelics. I myself have wondered this as well. If psychedelics, like themselves, are like if that itself is a spiritual teaching, you know what I mean? So I can just talk from a experiential point of view here that yes, psychedelic experiences have been where I have had my most profound spiritual realizations. But the question that comes into play is, was it me that had that spiritual realization, or was it induced and catalyzed by the psychedelic that I was on? And you know, you see it all around. You see people take these psychedelics and it goes both ways. They take the psychedelics and have these intense spiritual journeys and realizations and whatnot, and then you have your other people who take psychedelics just to experience the high of it, just to use it in a recreational sense, you know, and there seems to be no sort of spiritual repercussion whatsoever. Immediately, what that makes me think of is the individual going into the experience. Because I've thought about it before, the psychedelic experience is just, it's like this. It's like this. It's just a different type of conscious experience going on. And it is literally the conceptual mind that makes out the psychedelic experience to be bizarre and different from this experience. And if there wasn't any of that conceptual mind going on, the psychedelic, there would be no distinction between a shift in this experience into a psychedelic experience. It would simply just be like things moving around like they do in this experience. It would just, all of a sudden, things would be different. And it's our minds. It's our minds that go into these experiences and describe it the way we intellectually think it is, you know? Somebody who has never had any sorts of spiritual background, you know what I mean, that takes a psychedelic, typically, you know, if they know anything about the psychedelics, they may know that they are associated with spirituality, but they might not think that's true. They might not think it matters, or it's a type of metaphor or something, and they take the psychedelic to have a good time. And they have a good time. They get all messed up, and their vision was all messed up, and their thoughts were crazy, and they felt so weird, laughing at everything. You know, they had a good time on the psychedelic, but there was no ego death. There was no epiphanous realizations. There was no seemingly connection with higher beings or mysterious energies and whatnot. All the stuff that I would consider, you know, the spiritual side of the psychedelic experience. So I can just say right now, the reason I fear going into psychedelic experiences is because I assume that it's going to induce an overwhelmingly spiritual experience in which I have intense realizations that could potentially harm my sober ego mind, you know? But when I go into the psychedelic experience, it once again can go both ways. I don't always have those intense spiritual realizations like I assume I'm going to every single time. And I can have a recreational experience with psychedelics, even if I'm fearing a sort of spiritual teaching, you know. The experience just turns out to be this alteration in my experience that I find pleasurable. And any sort of spirituality that I find amidst those experiences is coming from my own conceptual mind, and I can notice it, you know? I can tell it's me making out this experience to seem grand and seem beautiful. And you also have your people that are taking psychedelics to get fucked up, and then all of a sudden have this intense and extraordinary realization. And you know, for an example of some of these realizations, stuff like just realizing you're one with the universe, or realizing that you in essence don't exist, or realizing that life and time and whatnot and is an illusion, thinking you're communicating with basically separate external spirits that you can't see right now but come to while you're in this psychedelic experience. People can be like people can unwillingly be hurled into a spiritual psychedelic experience, even if they were trying to just take it to have a good time, even if they didn't know about the spiritual aspects of psychedelics. So, you know, to put it simply, I really do think it's the landscape of the mind that is going into the psychedelic experience. Like, if I were to take a psychedelic right now, I would assume, this is all assumption, that I'm going to have this strange feeling all throughout my body, and that my vision is going to be moving and distorted and very intricate and detailed, and that chances of me going into anxious or panic-like loops seems to be more possible, you know, and also the assumption that there could be some sort of deep spiritual realization that comes like from out of nowhere while I'm on this trip. There's all these assumptions that this mind has about what's going to happen when it goes into psychedelics. Now, whoever's watching this, every single one of you is a different mind, you know? And you're going to go into psychedelics differently than I would. And this doesn't necessarily change the nature of the psychedelic trip itself, but the way in which you, the perceiver of the trip, perceives the trip will be different. That will be different. And this is what makes us be able to take them just to get messed up, or to take them to have spiritual realizations, or to struggle with taking them because you think they're gonna make you go insane, you know? It's all this mind. It's all this mind. And the psychedelic experience is, in its nature, what it is a concoction of hallucinations and sensations. It's this very strange and alien thing going on. And it's because you took this chemical and it altered the chemistry of your body. And you are, colloquially speaking, high on a drug. This is what many of us know and have stapled in our minds while we're amidst one of these trips. But the trip itself is, first of all, very familiar with this right now. It is this, but it's very different. It's very different at the same time. On a sufficient dose of psychedelics, you know, the world is very different. The world is very different, and we could go into what psychedelic you're taking and the intensity and speed and durations of the psychedelics in particular, and if that has to do with spiritual understandings and stuff like that. I'll go as far as to say dose does matter. Dose matters. If you're taking a gram of mushrooms, or even like a single tab of LSD, or, you know, less than those ranges, even up to like 2 grams of mushrooms, 3 grams of mushrooms, if you're thinking to yourself, these aren't spiritual experiences, or if you're a recreational user of psychedelics, oh, this isn't that bad, this isn't that intense, you're not taking enough. You're not taking enough, because these things become existentially overwhelming. These psychedelic trips, at least in my opinion, the second I go above a tab of LSD or a gram of mushrooms, 2 grams of mushrooms, you know, things start to get very different and very distorted. And as you increase this dosage, it gets more altered. It gets more distorted. And if you think, damn, these aren't as spiritual as I thought they were, or damn, this isn't that intense, this is just like a little, you know, I like shrooms, I've only done like a gram, but shrooms are pretty cool. You need to do more. You need to do more, because your vision, first of all, will literally be destroying itself into these completely bizarre hallucinations. And the longer you stare, you know, the last video I talked about, the longer you stare, everything becomes completely different. And I could keep talking about what the experience itself is like, but I think the reason people find spirituality in psychedelics, or get the acclamation that these psychedelic trips they're having are spiritual and they are giving them divine teachings and stuff, it's because psychedelics liquefy the conceptual mind. It liquefies the mind. Not only does it do the hallucination thing, and it dilates your pupils, and it makes your body feel very, very strange, but the state of mind you can get into while on psychedelics, a high dose of psychedelics, is very, very, very open, very free, very gullible to itself, and this allows the mind to basically imprint on the trip itself. And you start to make all these assumptions while you're in the trip, based out of what your mind knows and what, you know, and this is what makes psychologists think the psychedelics bring you into a sort of collective unconscious, and everything you're seeing and all the crazy thoughts you're having, and it's all just this collection of everything everybody's thought. Now that's a good way to describe it, because it's everything everybody's thought, so it must be what's happening in the psychedelic experience, if you get what I'm saying. But I think where things get weird is when you, where you are right now, go into a psychedelic experience and you begin to derive information out of, dissect information out of this experience of hallucinations and sensations. And when the information that is derived out of the psychedelic experience doesn't line up with how one generally and typically and habitually thinks, there's this idea that you have learned something. I've experienced this many times on psychedelics, that you seem to be you're receiving information from some external source that you, or at least I, always associate with the psychedelic itself. This information is coming from the LSD or the DMT or the mushrooms, and when you're learning all these when you're learning these things that are very unfamiliar to how you usually are, it gives you the impression that you're being taught. You're learning something while you're on psychedelic trips is teaching you. And you come out of the trips and you go, these psychedelics, dude, they teach you. They open your mind. They reveal things to you and tell you all about how you really are and who you should be and whatnot. Now, I don't know a damn thing about the, what's going on, what's actually going on. I'm just playing with words. I'm just messing around with words. But I think with what I can conceptually make up for you right now, psychedelics aren't your parents. They don't raise you. And when I say raise, I mean structuralize the mind that you have right now. You are the one working with all that. You are the one that is changing. And I could go out on a limb here and I could say the entire universe is you changing. Now, when you go into a psychedelic experience, you pin it on the psychedelic that it's changing you. You're learning. You're teaching. You're being taught. But I think it is a complete dissolution of self and other, first of all. And in that space, new patterns of thinking arise. New ways of thinking. And when I say psychedelics aren't your parents, what I mean is, if you want to be having spiritual experiences on psychedelics but aren't, first of all, you need to do some more research. You need to go online and research the chemistry of psychedelics and the history of psychedelics and the full-on background and everything we have available talking about these psychedelics. you're going to see there's a lot of spirituality associated with it. The next thing you got to do, and this is for people that want to use psychedelics for spirituality, but they don't seem to be spiritual. Take a high dose of psychedelics, and realize that it's you that's not spiritual. It's you that's not spiritual. And amidst that experience, pay like very close attention to the hallucinations and to the way in which one thought is shifting to the next. You know, and sort of go into this meditative like awareness of the experience you're having. And I'm getting kind of like flashbacks in my head right now of, you know, what that induces. At least for me. You will start to realize, in a very Buddhist-like way, that you're not doing any of this. And it's completely something else. And it makes you wonder, what is doing this? And how is this happening? And how is this possible? What routes of chemistry and ways of consciousness and neurons in the brain make it so this can be even experienceable? You need to really look at the trip, and you need to be on a high dose of psychedelics. You need to be on a dose where you think you took too much. I heard that just the other night from Terrence McKenna, and it's so true. You need to think you took too much, and you messed up this time to have a spiritual experience on psychedelics if you are not spiritually in tune, you know? And I'm not going to say, if you do what I just said, you'll have a spiritual experience on psychedelics. You could just be, in your conceptual mind, high as fuck. Really, really, really messed up. Oh, dude, I'm too high. Shit. Why would I do this? I am so way too high right now. This sucks. I hope I make it out of this. You know, that's not spiritual, and you could just freak the fuck out. You could just completely writhe right out of your own skin because of how uncomfortable the experience is. But why the fuck did that just happen? Why did that just happen? Why did you freak out? What was wrong? These are things that I've experienced, the major uncomfortability of psychedelics in high doses. And this is why I think high doses of psychedelics is kind of important, is not only because it's completely present and right there happening, completely available to you, but it's so intense. It's so powerful. It overrides every way in which you think you know and can operate yourself and control your environment and your own mind. And it's the high doses where the psychedelic spirits really rest, and they're waiting for you. They're waiting for you to realize that this experience is, I was going to say not normal, but basically realizing there is no normal. There is no normal. There is no base reality. And all of this can, you know, in a nutshell, be looked at as the individual going into the experience. But I feel good in saying this, that the way psychedelics work in high doses allows the culturally conditioned ego mind that you are to see the way out of itself, to see that it is essentially a trap you have put yourself in, and the whole narrative in your mind of, I'm doing this to get high, I'm gonna have a good time, or oh, this is scary, I don't want to do this anymore, or these aren't that spiritual, damn, I really wish they were more spiritual, I'm jealous of other people. That's what makes the trips out to be the way they are. You know, and we can argue till we're red in the face that, is it the psychedelic that taught you that, or is it you realizing that? You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's what, in my opinion, makes psychedelics such a wonderful vehicle into spirituality. Just kind of drooled a little bit there. But, like I said in the very beginning, I take psychedelics and have had awesome, great, fun, laughing, euphoric times plenty of times. And the only sort of spiritual realizations that came in from it were ones that were based in my conceptual mind, in a conversation I was having with somebody, or a thought, or just a, you know, thought I was having while I was sitting alone or something like that, you know. But I have also had experiences on psychedelics that seemed to be like an alien invasion of wisdom. Like nuts stuff that makes you think, you know. And it's what makes me give psychedelics such a spiritual name and such a spiritual cover, you know what I mean? I don't typically talk about psychedelics on this channel as things that get you fucked up and are awesome to do at parties, and, you know, I basically always talk about psychedelics in a spiritual sense, in be it the bizarre nature of the hallucinations or the realizations that I was having while I was on them and stuff. But I don't think I've ever talked about what, like, I haven't made a video on this topic before, of, are psychedelics of themselves spiritual, you know? And, you know, to be frank, I don't know. It's like there is no spirituality, and it's spirituality that made me realize that. You know what I mean? So psychedelics, and if it's spiritual and if it's recreational, is all just an illusion in your own head, you know? And, you know, as funny and ironic as it is, spiritual teachings taught me that. But I've said "but" a lot like that. I can say I've never been taught something through like English out of the psychedelic realm. It's always been the way in which I'm looking at it. You know what I mean? It could very simply just be a matter of perspective going into it. And this is where set and setting originated from back in the 60s. Is, you know, where are you going in? Where are you while you're going into it? And who's going into it? You know? Look at these things. Really look at those things. Who is it that is about to take this trip? Why is it that I'm taking this trip? If you're afraid to take psychedelics, why are you afraid to take psychedelics? Why am I so scared to trip? these things, looking into them will better help you realize how the psychedelics can help you. But to really, really realize it would be to ask yourself those things while on the trip. While on the trip. If you're scared to take psychedelics, and I'm not telling you, you know, if you're scared to take psychedelics, go and trip. You know what you want to do. You know what you want to do. But if you want to trip, but are scared to for this reason or that, look into why you're scared. And don't just look into the immediate justification reason that you've become so comfortable with using and saying as to why you don't trip. Look at that response and be like, why though? Why do I feel like that? Why is that what makes me scared of tripping? And really just dig in. And, you know, in my experience, because I do experience fear with psychedelics and going into them. I just get to this point where I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it, dude. And it's when your mind is liquefied in the psychedelic state that you are able to clearly see why you are thinking the way you are, because you're not pinned back into that cultural imprisonment. And that's why I think psychedelics offer spirituality. It's not like they are innately spiritual. It's just an experience. Like I said, it's hallucinations and sensations according to the neurological conscious body and life that we are. It's just hallucinations and sensations. But out of it you can derive wisdom. And out of this wisdom, you as an individual grow and do better and treat people better and treat yourself better and eat better and do better things for yourself and gain such a rich and loving understanding of this experience you're having, rather than going to your deathbed thinking that life sucks and that this is meaningless and that there's nothing that's going to happen after death, and all these things that make life out to be just this normal little thing that's going on. Yeah, psychedelics very much so offer an alternative perspective, you know, because not only do they shift your perspective, but they change your whole reality. They change your whole reality, and if you're there to see it, if you're there to hear it, if you're there to think and analyze your own thinking mind while with the psychedelics, you may derive some of this psychedelic wisdom that everybody talks about and that you really wish you could have, you know, or feel like doesn't exist, you know, and want to discover it. The mind is a big role player. The mind is a big part of the trip. It's what geeks out. It's what narrates the whole thing. It's what becomes spiritual from them or doesn't. It's what thinks this trip is spiritual. It's what thinks this trip is just me high. Oh, I'm just tripping balls, dude. You're not gonna learn anything if you don't look into yourself as well. It's all just gonna be one thing after another, one thing after another. So I guess final words, Are psychedelics innately spiritual? If you say so. If I say so. Sometimes you can't help what you say, so you're gonna think and believe what you think and believe. And you know, that's what you say. And this is what I say. And it's just this, it's a trip. It's a beautiful, far out trip. It's actually very far out. But yeah, that's it for this video, I'm pretty sure. Thank you all so much for watching. The context of the video kind of shifted here and there, but whatever. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll be back with more. See you guys later.